Hello world, Julio here, and today we're going to be building this really nice UI that also uses GSAP animations. I also decided not to make this project responsive because I wanted to challenge you, the subscriber, to take this project and make it responsive on your own. So if you want to participate, grab the code from the GitHub repo in the description, and then you can host the responsive code inside of a code pen, which you can then later on send me the link to, and then in a future video, we can review all the submissions. So I hope that you guys want to participate, but for the time being, let's just get right into the video. So usually before the tutorial begins, we go over the necessary files. But in this case, if you want to follow along with me, I'll be placing a link in the description below to a GitHub repo where you can get the files you see here, including the images. So go ahead and grab those files. And once you're ready, let's open up the project in the browser. As usual, this way we can have both windows side by side and we can see the changes as they happen. Something to mention here is that I'm using the Ionic Icons CDN as well as the GSAP CDN. Then what we want to do is go inside of the body and open up the header tag. The header is going to hold all the navigation information. Then we want a div with the class of container to limit how big this width gets. Then we'll have the nav tag with the class of nav. Then we want to create our logo. For that, we'll use an anchor tag and then we'll apply the class of nav logo. And we can just point it to the index.html. And I call this Javelin. Then what I'll do is go underneath and open up a UL tag with the class of nav list. And then in here we can have an li with the class of nav item, and inside of it an anchor tag with the class of nav link. And this is not going to point anywhere for now. We need 4 more items, so let's just copy that and paste it down below. And now we can just simply have the first one point back to the index.html since it will be the link for home. Then the second one, we can call it gallery. Then the third one can be features. Then the fourth one can be reviews. And finally, the last one is going to be shop. Now we will go outside of the UL. And in here, we want to have a div with the class of shopping bag. And inside of this div, we are going to be placing our icon. So if you were to go to the Ion Icons documentation, the icon for the shopping bag that we will use, for that we need the class of Ion bag. And then inside of it, I also want to have a span with the class of shopping, or actually let me just call it bag item count. And then we can just have the value of 0 here. So we will use this to create the little bubble that shows us how many items are in the cart. And this is going to be pretty much it for the header. What we have to do now is go underneath of the header, and we want to open up a section with the class of hero. Then we will be placing the 2 circles with the position of absolute. So for that, let's open up a div with the class of circle. And then a secondary class of circle small. Then inside of this div, we want to have an image, and that will be the image with the name of circle small. Now we also need another image as mentioned, and this one is going to be the bigger one. So let's change this class to large, and then we also have to change the image name from small to large. And now we get both images. Now underneath of the images div, I'll have the container again, just to keep it consistent with the navigation width. And in here, I'm going to have another div, this time with the class of content. And this is going to be the inner container that I'm going to be using Flexbox on to control where I move the items inside of it. Then I'm going to have another div with the class of text. Here I'm going to have an h1, and the text inside of that one is going to say lifestyle, and then I'm going to use the BR tag to basically create a breakpoint so that my text will break into the next available line. And then it will say smart, and then I want a span in here so that I can style this even further, because I want the part that says watch to have a different color from the rest. And if we go down, as you can see, the BR tag is working because it's breaking it to the next line. Then what we need is an H5, and this one will say technology of the future. Then we'll use a P tag with some dummy text. So for that, we'll just use emit to generate some text for us. Finally, we need an anchor tag. In this one, we can just give it the class of CTA, and it's not going to go anywhere. Then we can say that the text is going to be by now. There's one more thing that we need, and that's going to be the div for the overlay with the 3 lines or sections, I should say, that when we reload the page are going to animate out of the way. So underneath, let's just have a div with the class of overlay. And inside of this div, we're going to have 3 more divs, and they're going to have two classes actually. The first one is going to be layer for the styles that they all share, and then the secondary will be layer 1. And now we basically just copy this, paste it down below 2 more times, and now we just switch the numbers. This one will be 2, and this one is going to be 3. And that's going to be it pretty much for the HTML markup. The next step is to go inside of the CSS so that we can style this further. So once inside of the CSS, the first step will be applying a basic reset, and this will be in the margin, then the padding, and finally the box sizing, we'll set it to border box. Then I'm going to select the HTML document, and I'm going to apply a root font size of 10 pixels. The reason for that is because I prefer using rem units, which are relative to the root, and it makes the math a lot easier. Then I'm going to select the header. The header is going to have a width of 100%. And the header will also have a position of absolute. Since we have a transparent background on the navigation, I want it to sit on top of the hero. So by giving it a position of absolute, we make sure that it floats on top of it. Let's also make sure that the starting top position is 0, as well as the left. Something else that we want to do here is apply some padding left and right. Or actually not left and right. Let's just do it top and bottom to create some spacing, and then 0 left and right. We'll deal with padding left and right when we do the styles for the container. Something else I want to do here is apply a high C index value, because I want to make sure that my header always stays on top of every single content here that we have. Then what I'll do is select the container, and I'm going to apply a max width of 140 rems. Then I'm going to have a margin of auto, 0 auto, so that I can center it here in the middle. And something else that I want to do here, as mentioned before, is apply some padding left and right. And for this, I'll just apply 1.5 rem, which equals to 15 pixels. And that's going to be it for the container. Now let's move down to the nav. So the nav is going to have a width of 100%. Then it's going to have a display of flex. I want to make sure that my items, my items in general are justify we justify the content to space between to create some separation between each div, as you can see right here. Then what we want to do is go underneath, and we want to style the logo a little bit. So let's target the nav logo. And here what we want to do is basically just increase the font size. So we'll set that to 3 rem. I'm also going to set the font size, well, not the font size, but the font weight to 800 to make it bold. Then I want to get rid of my text decoration by setting it to none. And then I'm setting the color to white. And for the time being, you're not going to be able to see it, but that's because it's merging into the background. We're going to be taking care of that later when we style up the hero section. After we style up the logo, let's now select the nav list. And again, here I'm going to do a display of flex. I also want to get rid of the bullet points. So for that, we can just simply do a list style of none. Then what we want to select is the nav items. So here we just want some separation. So we can just apply a margin left and right. And I can't get this right for some reason. So margin top and bottom is going to be 0. And for left and right, we can do something like 2.5 rem. And that's going to be it pretty much for the nav item. What I want to do now is select the nav link. And here again, I'm just going to apply a text decoration of none. Then I'm also going to set the font size, which will be 1.4 rem. Again, let's target the font weight as well so that we can make it bolder. And I'm also going to give it a layer spacing of 1 pixel. Again, the color is going to be white. And I'm going to be applying a hover effect. So here I'll do a transition as well, which will be on the color over 0.5 seconds. Now let's select the nav link again. And we want to apply the hover state, which is basically going to be changing the color. So for that, we'll just use an RGBA actually, and it's going to be of white. So we'll do 255, 255, and then we can do an alpha of 0.5. And again, as of right now, you're not going to be able to see it because it's blending in with the background. We'll take care of that when we style the hero section. What we have to do now is style the bag here. So for that, we have to make it an inline block. So let's select the shopping bag. And let's give it a display of inline block because we want to use transform translate to move it a little bit. Then what we can do, and it's not, because like by default the div is already a block element, we want to select the icon inside of it, or the I tag in this case, and we'll do a font size of 1.8 rem. Then what I want to do now is again change the color to white, and I also want to give it a cursor of pointer so that it gives it the effect that it's clickable. And actually, before I make it white, me actually coming back out, let me apply the transform translate X of something like -2 rem, just so that you can see. And now it's just being moved a little bit. And the reason for that is because later on I'm going to be moving this span, the circle here inside of it, a little bit off to the right side. And when we shrink this really small, then this is kind of going to overflow. So I'm moving it by the same amount that I'm going to be placing it here on the top right, which is going to be a right of 2 rem. So that's why I did this right here. Now we can go back and turn this on again. And what I want to do next is select the span inside of it. So remember we gave that a class of bag item count. And I'm just going to give it a width. And then the height is also going to be of the same value, which will be 2 rem. Then I went to apply a background color. And that's going to be a shade of purple with the following values. So 71E and then FF. What we can do next is apply a border radius of 50% just so that we can make it round. We also want to, I don't like the Poppins font here that I actually have installed and forgot to install to begin with. But let's do that. So I already have here, let's say font family on the HTML document of Poppins. And the reason why I can just use this font is because I already have it installed in my computer. So if you plan on using it, you're going to have to download it or import it with Google Fonts. So let's go back down here, and what I'll do now is set my font family actually to sans serif. And what I'll do next is increase the font size to, well, not technically increase by much, but let's do 1.2 rem. So we can make it a little bit smaller. Then I want to give it a display of flex so that I can make sure that later on I can center this circle perfectly inside of my little container. So again, let's do a display of flex. And what I want to do now is give it the positioning of absolute. And now I can go ahead and say that the top will be something like -1 rem. And then I'm going to be placing, well, it's going to be actually a lot easier for you guys to see the placement of it if I comment this out again briefly. Right here you see the bag. And then I'll place it right to the -2 rem. As you can see, already looks better right here. And now, since we used the Flexbox properties, we can also do an align items of center, and then we can justify the content to center as well. And obviously, we also want to have the same color here. So let's apply a color of white. And the reason why I'm placing it here is because I like to group everything together width and height, and then if I'm using colors or something like font related. So for example, maybe I'll place this somewhere like right here and so on. But that's just a personal preference. You could do anything you would like. So that's going to be it pretty much for the bag item count. Again, let me just comment this out so that I can basically get it back on there. And now we can go ahead and style the hero. So now we'll be able to see everything here that we have done. Let's start off with a width of 100%. Again, let's also apply height. This time it's going to be of the BH. And then the background color is going to be a charcoal type of shade. So it's going to have the following values of 2B2, B2, B. As you can see, we can now see this a lot better. As far as like the hero section, something else that we can do here is give it an overflow of hidden, because we want to hide everything that's flowing out here. Then what we can do also is apply a position of relative, and then we also want it to be a flexed container. So for the time being, you're not able to see the text, but that's okay. So the flex container, and then what we can do here is align the items to the center. Just like so. And let me actually go check here. Well, I see what the issue is. The issue is because we have the images right here. So it's basically just dividing everything up. So as soon as we give this the position of absolute, that's all going to change. So let's not worry about that for now. So since we already took care of the hero, let's select the circle. So these are going to be the images container. And something that they share in common is the position of absolute. And as you can see, we can now see our text. What I want to do next is set the top starting position for the circle small as well as the circle large. So for that, we will use the individual classes that we gave them to separate them. So circle small, it's going to be placed to the top, and negative 15 rem. And to the left, we can do 21, negative 21 rem. And now we can grab the circle large, and we can place it to the bottom, and that's going to be negative 80 rem. And then to the right, it's going to be negative 60 rem, just like so. And let me actually make sure that the watch, oh, so here is another issue. I forgot that there was also another div here within the HTML. So let's actually add that in, because I was just confused. Where's my image? But now that I checked the HTML document, it's because we never added it in. So let's have a div here underneath of this text div with the class of wrapper, actually watch wrapper. And then here we're going to have an image. We'll go inside of the images folder, and we're going to grab the watch PNG. And that's the other images, the other image that we need. So now we can just go back to the style sheet. And underneath of the circle large, what we can start doing here is now styling up the content. So remember, the content is also going to be a flex container. So let's give it a display of flex. Let's also apply a width. And then the height, we can just leave it so that it takes up as much space as it needs, as you can see here. Then what I can do here is align my items to the center so that they both line up perfectly here on the y-axis. So align items center. And then I also want a position of relative here. The sole reasoning mostly being because I want to set a C index so that this content here stays on top of these circles all the time. So I'm going to say C index of 10, something like 10. And now we get the image and text side by side. And the next step is styling the text and then later on the image. So let's select the text. Here, all we have one to do is change the color for everything inside of it. And we also want to do a flex of 1. This way, it's going to take all the available space. Usually, if I give the image container to a flex 1, it will just share 50%. But I want to make this slightly smaller. So I'm giving this a flex of 1. You'll see later on when I style the image. But for now, let's just continue with the text. So again, let me just select the text, followed by the H1 inside of it. The H1 is going to have basically a fluid font size to a certain extent. So we'll be using the viewport width unit for this one. So we want to do a font size, and then I'm using the calc function, and inside of it, I'm using 1 rem plus 4 of the viewport width. So if I try to make this smaller, it's going to some extent, it's going to keep basically adapting, in a sense, becoming somewhat fluid. The reason why I didn't just use the viewport width itself is because I don't want this to be too big or too small later on, which is why I mixed it with a 1 rem unit here. So what I want to do next here is actually also increase the font weight. Again, let's just stay with 800. I'm going to text transform to uppercase. And then I want to apply a margin to the bottom. Actually, I want to apply a margin to the top first. Margin. Then here, I'll do something like 8 rem. And actually, I don't want to apply it here. This is for the other heading that we have underneath it. So we'll just delete that from there. And actually what I want to apply here is a line height. and we'll do 1.1, actually 1.2. Now let's select the span, and here what we want to do is just make this watch a different color. So text H1 span, and here we can just make it a shade of purple. So it's not going to be this one, but it's going to be one with the following values, and then FFF, just like so. Now let's select the H5. Here the font size is going to be 1.9 rem. Font weight will be 800. And ideally, it would be even better if we just group these things together so that we can just basically apply the same font weight since they have it in common. But for this example, it doesn't really matter. I'll just keep it as it is. I just thought that I would point that out. And essentially, it's the same thing with the text to uppercase. Ideally, like I could also, and that's not what I want. So ideally, you could also do this and just apply it here to the text here, uppercase, and it's going to be the same, but as you can see, it's also making this uppercase here, which is not what you want, but then we could just target this individually and make it a lowercase. So the next step is actually setting, after the font weight, we want to set the margins that I spoke of. So margin to the top is going to be 8 rem, 0 on the right, 4 rem to the bottom, and then 0 on the left. And it's just going to give us the separation here. Now let's style the p tag. And text transform here, we can just say that it's going to be lowercase, or we can set it to initial. At the end of the day, it's going to be the same thing. Then I want to also change the font size. So here I'm just going to increase it to 1.6 rem. Then what I want to do is also apply inline height of 1.5. And then finally, I want to create some separation here with the button. So let's apply a margin bottom. And for that, I can do something like 2 rem. Something else that I can do is actually go down here, and I can now style the CTA. The CTA is going to have a display of inline block. It's going to have a font size of something like, let's do 1.4. And that looks good. Text decoration will be set to none. We also want to change the color. And font weight, again, is something that we'll set to 800. And I think we also want to add some padding here and a background color. So let me add a padding of 1.5 rem top and bottom, and then 3 rem left and right. Background color is going to be that same purple we used before. And then let's also set a transition for the background color. And to keep everything consistent, let's just do it over 0.5 seconds. Now let's create a hover effect. And here we just simply want to change it to a different shade of the purple. And for that, we can just use the same color we used before. So now it looks a lot better. Well, what we can do now is actually style the watch wrapper. And here we'll just use the flex, and we want to set the value, the first value, to 0. The second one is going to be for the flex shrink, and then for the flex basis, I want to make this 45%. And the next step here will actually be to style the overlay. So let's select the overlay. And this is just going to have a width of 100%. It will have a height. And then we can set this to absolute. And we also need a C index here. We want to keep it on top of the page, so let's do something really high, like this value. And that's going to be it for now. So what we can do is actually create, well, not create, but target the layer. And the only thing they have in common here is a background color. And for that, we can just use another shade of purple or grayish, and then double A, and then B, F. And the next step will actually be to target each individual layer. So for that, we'll just also apply a display of flex because we want them to be on the same line. And then all we have to do is just basically specify a flex. So 1 is going to be flex 1. As you can see, since the other ones have not been set yet, it's just taking all the available space. But let's say that for this demo, we want to say that it has a background color of white, black, I should say. And then just copy this, and then I just change the value to 2. And then the color should be white. And then for layer 3, we can say that it's going to be 3. And then this one could be something like red. So as you can see now, we have our 3 layers, and they're both all of them are equal. So now what we can do is just basically get rid of this background color because we don't really need it. And then this can stay like that. So the next step is to now go inside of the HTML document, and then we'll just apply the JavaScript here. So make sure that you do this underneath of the CDN for GSAP. Because if you do it elsewhere, like after, then it's not going to work because it's not going to be able to find it. So script, and the first thing I will do here is basically target each individual layer. So GSAP, and then I can say 2, and then in here, what I can say is that I want to select the layer 1. Then I want to basically just manipulate the Y position, and it's going to be -100 of the BH. And then for the rest of it, we don't really have to do much except for a delay. So the delay is going to be over 0.5 seconds, just like so. And now we just basically have to do the same for all the rest of them. So this one is going to be layer 2, layer 3, and then we can just here modify the delay. I'll say 0.7, and this one can be 0.9. So as you can see, it looks more fluid. But there's an issue here. Now we can't click on any of the links. And the reason for that is because this overlay div that we had before is on top of it. So let's also get rid of it using GSAP. So let's, again, just copy the last one. It doesn't really matter. And what we can do here is just target the overlay. And if we do it like that, it's just not going to look right because we have to at least make it so that all this has ended before we actually get rid of the main overlay div. So let's do something like 1.5 seconds before it just moves away. And now again, we can click on our links if that's what we wanted. The next step will actually be animating in the circles as well as the text and all the other images. So let me actually just go here, and for that I will be using the from to tweens. So again, we'll use GSAP, and then from to. And what I want to do in here is basically, again, select the element that I want to animate. So in this case, the text. Then I want to target the X position. So this is going to be basically the from position where it's starting, and then where it ends. So in this case, the X will be 30 rem. And then I also want to turn off the opacity because I don't want to see it until it gets to its final destination. So let me actually bring this down to one line so that it looks cleaner. And then I just want to separate this with a comma. Again, let me just bring it back down to one line. And I'm going to have the final position on the X, which is going to be its normal starting position of 0. And then the opacity is going to be set back to 1 so that we can see it. And we also want to apply an easing function here as well. So again, it's going to be ease. And then what we want to say here is that we want back dot out, and then inside of it, we can say 1.7. And then the only thing left to do here is basically just set a delay. And that can be something like 1.9. And as you can see, that already looks a lot better. But we still have to animate all the rest of the stuff. So what I'm going to animate next is going to be the watch wrapper. So a lot of this is going to be similar, so we can just go ahead and copy this, paste it down below, and now we can just say that what we want is the watch wrapper. And here we can keep this the same. What we want to do here as well is actually just change the delay so that it loads in after the text. But that's too slow, so let's just do 2.3. And that looks good. So something else that we want to do here is animate this circle as well as this one, but we wanted to animate first before any of this. So let's take care of that right now. And again, I just copied and pasted the same thing from before. And what I want to select here is the circle small. And I want this one to be coming in from the left instead. So I'll do a -30. And then all of this can stay the same. The only thing that's going to change is the delay. So we're going to set this to 1 because we want it to load in first before any of the text, just like so. And now we only need to take care of this one. So since this one is going to be pretty similar, let's just copy it, paste it down below, and change it from circle small to circle large. And then finally, the only thing left, of course, is changing the delay, which we will do 1.5. And that doesn't look quite right though. Oh, that's because we have to make sure that the circle large has a positive value. This way it comes in from the right. Just like so. And that's going to be it for this tutorial.